get started.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Emily, and thank you, Gail, for helping us to host our member virtual chat. And good morning to all of you guys, all of our amazing members. It's an exciting time here at the zoo. We are not open quite yet, but we do have some plans on opening. So we're getting closer and closer. So stay tuned to that information and those dates. Again, when we do open, we're going to have a special member preview or a member only. We're obviously working with our city officials. We want to make sure that our animals are safe, that our staff is safe, and of course, all of you guys are safe when you come in. So bear with us, but we're still going to be doing our member chats. We are going to start bringing back our Tuesday. We missed this last Tuesday, but we want to do every Tuesday and Saturday. So please tune in at least until we are open. And then even after we open, we're talking about doing a couple of these. This morning, as Emily said, is with our African spotted-necked otters. And the otters arguably are one of the most popular animals here at the zoo. It's one of the most requested animals to see. It's one of the most requested animals for adoption. Between our otters, our giraffe, and our elephants, they are one of the most popular. And it's not hard to figure out why. They're amazing. They have these great characters. They're lovable. And you know, they just are very inquisitive and intriguing species. So, of course, the African spotted-necked otter is from the continent of Africa. And these guys kind of range in the central part of Africa down to the south. And it is a freshwater otter, so they are swimming in lakes and streams and can be found in most of those freshwater lakes throughout that central portion of Africa. And they are very efficient at hunting. So let's get right to it. We do have two African spotted-necked otters here. We have Pfeiffer, who's our girl, and Hassani, who is our boy. Pfeiffer is 20 years old, and Hassani is almost 8. He turns 8 in October. Hassani has wanted to sleep in during the summertime here. Sometimes he likes to sleep in a little bit more. I can probably name a few people that like that also. But Pfeiffer is up and ready. So I'm going to switch my camera around. I'm using my laptop camera here, but I've got my extended one so that hopefully we can get a good view. Hang tight. Let's see what we can do with this. All right. So because I wanted to get you guys up close, I've got a webcam on an extender here that's going to allow us to get right in there. And hopefully I don't drop this because it's not waterproof. So this is Pfeiffer. She's our female. There she is right there. And she's actually giving you a great look at why they're called the spotted-necked otter, because they have spots on their neck. So those white spots are iconic to this species. She, again, is 20 years old, which is pretty old for this species. Typically around 14 or 15 is the median life expectancy. At 20 years old, she is one of the oldest spotted-necked otters on record. So she is what we would consider a geriatric animal, although she's doing really, really well with her health. We do health checks on her all the time, and she's doing really well. And as you can see, these guys are very active. Hassani, our boy, he's in the back right now. But Dane, one of our zookeepers, he's coming out, and he's going to toss a treat in with Pfeiffer here. So we're going to see this treat kind of drop in. Woo! We're going to move the camera so it doesn't get wet. Perfect. And so you can see Pfeiffer swimming away there. Inside that toy is some fish. Now it's up to her if she wants to go after that or not. But of course, this is what we call enrichment, and that is anything that changes up the day-to-day life of our animals. And what we try to do is get a little creative to bring out some of those natural adaptations. And otters are, as I said, extremely intelligent, and they're able to manipulate their environment with those front feet. So we might see her go over to that, and I'm gonna actually hand our camera to Adam. Adam's coming, there we go, perfect. That'll give me a little bit more room to try to figure this out. There we go. All right, so I got Adam controlling our long extension camera so I can chat with you guys about everything going on here. So there are some fish in there. We do feed these guys freshwater fish because, of course, they are freshwater otters, so they're eating freshwater fish. They'll eat some crustaceans, some mollusks, but a lot of their diets consist of that freshwater fish. It's a small species of otter, so they're not that long or that heavy-bodied. She's probably about 2 feet with that tail. And she, again, is full grown. And just like all otters, they are excellent swimmers. So the webbed feet that they have allow them to propel themselves through the water at about 8 miles an hour. And that is fast enough to be able to catch those slippery fish. And if you get a good look at those claws, they have very sharp claws to be able to grab onto their fish and to be able to then, of course, bite and kill that fish and then swallow it down. Now, this is a unique species also because they will eat on the fly, or eat on the swim, if you will. They'll go ahead and grab their fish and then just turn on their back and be able to eat it right on their back, and then they keep swimming. This saves a lot of energy. There's some otters that have to go ashore to eat their food. And so what that means is they're expending all that energy to dive down, grab a hold of their food, and then they have to get to shore, eat that food, and then come back up, go back out to hunt. There are some sea otters that spend all day hunting, and they almost expend as much energy as they get from their nutrients. So it's this constant battle. These guys have a very fast metabolism, and for their size, they eat a lot. They require a lot of fish. So they're well adapted to be able to hunt those fish. As we said, the webbed feet allow them to swim at about 8 miles an hour in the water. And then I don't know if you can see that when she jumps in, all those bubbles are coming up. We might see it again, that they come up through her mask, through her nose. And that creates almost like a windshield, if you can imagine, for your vehicle. Your window shield creates this aerodynamic view that allows your car to be to create less friction. Same thing happens with our otter. They go down and they'll blow these bubbles, and those bubbles will get caught in their fur, and that allows them to zip through the water even faster. They also have a protective layer over their eyes, and that allows them to see very similar to if we were to have goggles. So that broad tail allows them to twist and turn on a dime. I mean, these guys are extremely agile, and they are part of the Musselidae family. So people look at them and say, oh, they look like a weasel or a mink. Well, they are part of that family. And so it is a species that we do not go in with. We do have protective contact. It's a small species, but they still have those sharp claws and those powerful teeth. And it's not a species that we need to go in with to be able to work with. We do a lot of training with our otters. And as I said, they're incredibly intelligent. And so they're able to pick up different behaviors that we ask of them. Now, we're not asking them to do silly tricks. We don't need them jumping through hoops or, doing silly things like that. But we would ask them to stand on a scale or just target from one side to the other. Pfeiffer knows how to stand up. She knows how to dive. She knows how to target. And all these things allow our animal care staff and also our veterinary team to be able to get a good look at them without having to get our hands on them. And that's the easiest, best, and safest way to be able to manage our animals here at the zoo. Because if we go in with them, that could be very stressful for them. And we don't want that to happen. So what we do is we train them to voluntarily be a part of their own health care. And that's what we do with all of our animals. And by doing that, we can ask animals to voluntarily allow us to draw blood, to be able to look at their mouth, to be able to give voluntary injections, and to see her swim in circles. So she's showing off just how agile she is. And of course, you can see just how it's seamless as she spins. And they also have that very bendable body, very much like a ferret. They have a flexible spine, and that's what allows them to get into those crevices and to be able to flip around to catch a fish. Fish are extremely fast. They are slippery, and they're well adapted to avoid predation. So the predator, the otter, has to be well adapted to be able to catch them. So it's a good balance. Now, Hassani, again, who's in the back, he is a little bit bigger than Pfeiffer is, and males will tend to be a little bit larger. Again, I don't think he's going to come out today, but hopefully you guys have had an opportunity to see him, and or when we open back up, we'll get another opportunity to see Hassani and Pfeiffer. Hassani came to us from the Toledo Zoo, and again, he'll be 8 years old in October. So he's almost 8, a couple more months here, and he'll be 8. And again, we're estimating Pfeiffer's age at about 20 years old because she was a wild-caught otter. Now, people always ask, well, how do you get, oh, now she's showing you how she can use those front paws. That's just a stick there, not a fish. But she's showing you how she would be able to grab a hold of a fish and bring it right up onto her chest. So everyone asks, you know, how do you get your animals? And some of the animals, most of our animals, we receive from other AZA accredited zoos. So we are a AZA, Association of Zoos and Aquarium. We are an accredited facility, and we work with the other, about 270 other accredited facilities in the United States, and even some outside of the United States, to be able to shift and move animals. Now, we don't buy and sell animals. We're not in this to make money off of a giraffe or an otter or an elephant. So most of those animals are on breeding loan when they are donated or a donation to the receiving facility. So when we got Hassani, we didn't pay for Hassani, but he was donated to us by the Toledo Zoo. We do have to pay for the shipping, so we pay for that transportation, which can vary depending on what species that is. Some of those animals can be driven in a crate in a car, like an otter. Some of them have to have heavy machinery, like an elephant. Some of them fly, FedEx or UPS. So it really varies depending on where those animals are coming from and the species. And again, we work with those other zoos to shift and move animals either for breeding or not necessarily for breeding, but to just place those animals in a position where they have a healthy and sustainable home. So Hassani came to us from the Toledo Zoo, but he does not have a breeding recommendation, which was a perfect fit for Pfeiffer because she is post-reproductive at this age of 20 years old. And so the reason Hassani does not have a breeding recommendation is because his bloodline is already well represented. So we've talked about this before. For each species, we have a stud book and a stud book keeper, and they are part of the species survival plan. And what that means is that all those zoos were working together to maintain genetic diversity and sustainability within each species throughout our zoos. So that means that some animals get a breeding recommendation, like our elephants did. Look at her, she's just spinning around that trunk there. She's so silly. Like our elephants did, we had Penzi that was born, or our meerkats that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Those animals had breeding recommendations, so we went ahead and put them together, and we have some offspring. These do not. So it really kind of depends on the individual. And again, we're working to sustain the species long term, not just tomorrow, but 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. So Pfeiffer was brought in. So that's one way we get our animals is from other zoos and breeding recommendations. The other reason we would get an animal is if that animal was injured beyond release because of human causes. So maybe an eagle gets caught up in a wire, has a wing that needs to be amputated, that individual won't be able to survive in the wild on its own. We would find a home for it in human care, or because there is a human-animal conflict. That's why Pfeiffer came in. She was considered a nuisance animal, and I don't think she's a nuisance animal, but she was considered a nuisance animal because she figured out that instead of catching her own fish, she would wait for the fishermen to catch their fish, and then she would steal the fish from them. So she, again, very intelligent, figured out, why should I go catch my own fish when this guy is catching them on a line, makes it super easy, and then, of course, she just steals them. Great for Pfeiffer, but not great for the fishermen. So the fishermen ended up capturing her, trapping her, and was going to kill her, was going to euthanize her. And so that's when we were able to step in and say, okay, instead of this animal losing their life for really no cause of their own, let's try to find a home for them as an ambassador animal in human care in one of our zoos. And so now Pfeiffer, for the last 18 years, has been able to teach people about this conflict. And, you know, we say that it's a nuisance animal, but it's really humans that are moving into the ecosystems and the habitats where these animals live, and that human-animal conflict, most likely the animal is going to lose. That is why we have our 2 grizzly bears, Ronan and Finley. The same thing happened to them just outside Yellowstone National Park. They were considered a nuisance bear. They were going to be put down. we were able to find a home for them. And so it's awareness that we need to create, where we need to be able to live together with our wild animals. And it's one that in a zoo, we can teach through these amazing ambassadors. So an animal like Pfeiffer. Pfeiffer also wants to teach us about sustainable fish and making sure that we're leaving enough fish in our oceans, in our streams, in our lakes, that we are able to eat and, you know, sustain what we need, but also that all of our marine animals and all of our freshwater animals have the amount of fish that they need. And so we've entered into a conservation mission with the with Seafood Watch out of Monterey Bay Aquarium. So Monterey Bay Aquarium has created Seafood Watch. You can go to seafoodwatch.org. There's an app for your Android, for your Apple, your iPhone, that you can get this app, and this allows you to know what fish is sustainably harvested. So they've gone through and they've done all the hard work in figuring out what fish is sustainable, what is good populations out there, either freshwater or saltwater fish, and then who is doing good practices in farming those fish and fishing those fish. Because there are unfortunately a lot of fish out there that are not sustainably harvested, or they're harvested in a very destructive way, and where we do these deep nets that just drag everything and kill all the coral and the ocean bottom, and they aren't selective on what fish they are capturing. And so inside those fish could be endangered fish, it could be sharks, it could be dolphins, it could be sea turtles. And a lot of times those animals do not survive that process. And so we want to put our money where our mouth is, and you guys can all be a part of making sure that we have sustainable fish for generations to come. Because when you guys go out to buy any seafood, any freshwater fish from your grocery store, or when we go back to eating in restaurants, you guys can make sure that you are being a part of the solution and not being more part of the problem. So we all have a huge responsibility and a huge power that we can change the outcome. Because I guarantee you, and this has already happened, that if you are going into your favorite seafood restaurant and asking them, what is your sustainable fish? And enough of us do that, guess what? That restaurant is going to start saying, hey, our consumers are wanting to make sure that we're doing and practicing good behavior. So we need to do that and get on board with that. And then that goes to the fishermen, and it goes all the way down the line. And then the fishermen that are doing and practicing good behavior, those are the ones that are getting rewarded. Because, of course, it is a little bit more expensive to make sure that we are fishing sustainably. And so we want to reward those fishermen and those people that are doing that good practice. So just know that when you're going out to purchase or to consume some of your favorite fish or lobster or whatever it is, make sure that you are doing that sustainably. And again, Monterey Bay Aquarium has made that so easy for us. I don't eat fish, but I have used the app to look in grocery stores and to see, who is practicing these good behaviors. There's a lot of local restaurants that are in Tucson that all they have is sustainable seafood, which is awesome. It can be sushi. It can be, there is sustainable sushi. There's sustainable everything out there to meet any of your favorite needs. So, we can all do our part again to make sure that we're helping animals like Pfeiffer, like our sea otters, because otters really span across the world. There are different otter species, from our saltwater otters, our sea otters, to our fresh otters, and they are an apex predator, which means they're a keystone species. The ecosystem really relies on them, and other species rely on them for what they do. And so if you remove one of these animals out of that ecosystem, you could see some really traumatic effects that are going to happen right after that. So, again, that's our great conservation message from our otters and Pfeiffer, could not be a better ambassador for her species. Now, you might actually have seen a little piece of zucchini in there. I do have some zucchini. Now, these guys are carnivorous. They're eating, again, the majority of their diet is going to be fish or crustaceans or mollusks. But every now and then we like to give them just, again, it's enrichment. So they might eat a little bit of it. They might play with it. So I'll just throw a piece of zucchini in there. Let's see, maybe she'll go for it. She may not eat it. Maybe she will, but she likes to play with it. Earlier, that other piece that I gave to her, she was flipping it up in the air and playing with it. And then she'll also take it and hide it underneath those rocks. These guys are great at hiding things that they don't want us to find. So when we drain the pool and clean it, we find a lot of things that unfortunately gets dropped into the pool, and the otters take and they hide it down in there. So, but yeah, so she's showing you how she can grab things. She's got both of those pieces of zucchini now, and now she's going to take it down and hide them because, again, that's what she likes to do. Now, otters can only hold their breath for about 3 to 5 minutes, so it's not a species that goes down and really holds their breath for a long time. They have excellent eyesight, but they do need to be able to hunt in clear water. So you can see we've got very clear water here, and that's another thing that we just want to make sure that we're aware of in not putting trash or anything like that into our ocean or our waterways, because that, of course, can get tangled up not only in the fish that these guys eat, but also in our otters. So making sure that we are putting trash where it's supposed to, putting recycling where it's supposed to, so it doesn't end up in any of our waterways is really, really important with these guys too. Any of our animals that depend on the water, which really all of us do, but that depend on the water for either their livelihood or for, just because they live in the water like a fish, it's really a critical ecosystem that's so sensitive to minute changes. And one little minute change can really destroy that entire ecosystem that all those animals are going to depend on. So yeah, just make sure that we're all aware of that. And I know you guys are members. You guys are awesome conservationists. I mean, I really hand it to a lot of our members. They send posts all the time about them doing our eco challenges, our plastic challenges. You guys send in information that you guys are doing to be sustainable. And, that's amazing. That's awesome. And you guys are our extended voice. And that's the power a zoo has. 500,000 people walk through our gates every year. 196 million people walk through AZA zoos in the United States every year. You guys are a powerful, powerful force that can change consumer thought out there. I mean, you guys have the ability, you're a giant tidal wave that can change how we operate. And it's amazing to see that happen. So with that, Emily, I think maybe I saw some questions come through. So maybe we can answer a couple of questions here.
Yeah, there's quite a few. So even though Pfeiffer and Hassani do not have a breeding recommendation, did Pfeiffer have any young in the past?
She has not. So she was paired up with a male otter named Pacino, and Pacino passed away a few years ago, maybe 5, 6 years ago. We did have them together. They did not produce any offspring. We didn't really do any more research on maybe why not. So we didn't try to do artificial insemination. So she has not had any offspring. And at this point, again, at her age, she's most likely post-reproductive, and Hassani, our male that we have, does not have a breeding recommendation. So she has not had any pups. Typically, they'll have anywhere from 1 to 3 pups, and the gestation period is about 2 months. And so they're born fairly premature, and they're born blind and deaf, and they require their mother to completely care for them. And so they create dens that they will keep the pups in to keep them safe. And then as they start getting older, they will teach them how to swim. So you think an otter just automatically knows how to swim. Well, they got to be taught how to swim. So, and that's done through the mom. And a lot of times they'll grab them behind the scruff and they'll take them in and they'll teach them how to, swim up and to dive down and what to eat. So they're great mothers. They don't typically hang out in groups. This species, the African spotted-necked otter, you will sometimes see them in areas together that have a lot of resources, so they have a lot of fish, but they don't like hanging out in groups like sea otters do. You'll see sea otters in the Pacific congregate in large groups. A cuddle of otters is what it's called when you have a group of otters, because of course they are all cuddly. And a lot of times you'll see them holding their hands. We see that our sea otters hold their hands so that they don't go floating away and everyone stays next to each other. So the mom typically will raise the pups, and then after about a year, those pups will be almost full grown and they will go off on their own. So Pfeiffer has not had any pups here, but who knows, maybe in the future when we get, if we have other otters, maybe we will have otter pups, but not out of Pfeiffer.
And with the age difference, how well do Hassani and Pfeiffer get along? Because one of our viewers says that sometimes it's hard to tell if they're playing or fighting.
Yeah, no, they get along really well, and you're right that sometimes it's challenging to know if they are playing or fighting, because again, these guys are part of the Musselidae family, and that has all of our weasels in it. So our weasels, our wolverines, all those guys. So it can be a little bit of an aggressive species, but Pfeiffer, I think, takes on a motherly role from Hassani. Hassani was young when he got here. He was 3, I think, maybe 4, 2 years old. Adam's telling me 2. And so, she kind of really took on this motherly role with him. And with that, there's discipline that happens, and there is teaching, and sometimes that can look, aggressive. The majority of that, though, is play. These two, they really work well together. They don't compete that much for resources, attention, and Pfeiffer is a really, really amazing otter, and I think has taught Hassani a lot. So, and you can just see how active she is. So Adam's doing his best to follow along with her, but man, she's moving all over the place.
So Pfeiffer had a piece of wood earlier, which of course she cannot eat. Does she nibble on it? Is it just for play, sort of an enrichment item?
Yeah, it's just for play. She doesn't chew on it at all, and it's just for manipulation with her front paws. They love to carry things. They love to try to open things up. Of course, some otters will use tools. We know our sea otters will grab a hold of those stones and will crack oysters on the stone. So again, speaking to their intelligence. But yeah, they're not, she's not really going to be eating any of that bark or the tree or the branches. You might see some bamboo leaves in here also. That is all part of this enrichment. And every day, again, we try to give her something a little bit new. Of course, we can't change up a whole habitat every day, but we try to add some things or take some things out. We do have a plane flying over, so you might lose some audio here. But yeah, she's not going to eat that wood.
Are otters hunted for anything?
So otters historically have been hunted for their fur. They do have very dense fur, one of the densest furs of any mammalian. And that was used as hats and different products. Most of the time, they are only hunted now because they are stealing fish. And, the fishermen want to fish the fish because that's how they make their livelihood out of them. So now, unfortunately, they are hunted because of they're considered a nuisance animal. The species is a near threatened, so they're not an endangered species, but it is hard to get good numbers on their population. So there are researchers that are trying to get population numbers, but it is very difficult with this species.
Besides humans, are they a prey animal for any other species?
They are. So they are a prey animal for some crocodile. Again, it's an African species. And the fishing eagle. So the fishing eagle, of course, is going to be mostly looking for fish. But if an otter is there, they will definitely take an otter as well. So these guys have to keep their eyes open for the crocodiles and for the fishing owls. They don't make easy targets, so I'll tell you that. These guys, again, extremely intelligent, very fast, So, you know, they're not really the main prey for those species because there's obviously easier prey, but they do have to keep an eye out for the crocodiles and those fishing eagles.
How similar are otter paws to dog feet?
Huh, that's interesting. You know, it's they may be similar to some species that are water dogs, like your Labrador, but the dexterity and the webbing that an otter has is far superior. And so, you know, they're not really like, I would say, actually, they're almost more like a little guinea pig if you were going to, you know, try to compare them to something. They're little digits on like a guinea pig. Of course, they're not related to rodents, except for that they're mammals. But, you know, I don't think that they were really, to me, they don't have a similar trait to a dog paw. And again, they're being used very, very differently. So that webbing on these guys, I mean, you could spread those toes out and it's pretty impressive. It's hard to get a good look at them with, oh, she kind of is giving you her nails there. When she swims, you might be able to see that webbing go through, but it's hard to see it on the webcam here.
Do we heat or cool their pool, and how does their fur help keep them comfortable?
Yeah, so as I said, otters have some of the densest fur out of any mammals. Of course, they're going to be out of any mammals because mammals are the only ones that have fur, but they have some of the densest fur. And it's a great protectant. So with these guys, they don't have thick fur like the sea otters do. Of course, they're going to be in colder waters, but we do not heat or cool this pool. It is what Mother Nature puts it at. Now, we do have a great shade structure that's over here, so it does stay fairly cool. We obviously are going to filter it, and we have ozone on it, chlorine, and you know, all those things to make sure that the water is clean and good for them to swim in. But we do not cool or heat it. And that fur is extremely dense so that the water never actually gets to the skin. And so they're able to thermoregulate themselves underwater. And again, the sea otters in extremely cold water, you know, it's just like a wetsuit, a dry suit, if you would, because that water never really even gets to the skin. So a great adaptation that allows these guys clearly to spend a lot of time in the water.
And related to all that time they spend in the water, do otters have a special nictitating membrane so that they can swim underwater with their eyes open?
They do not. So the nictitating membrane is also kind of a third eyelid that some species have. They do not have a nictitating membrane. And again, they have that shield that goes over their eyes, kind of a protective coating that's very similar to goggles. And that protective coating is what allows them to be able to swim underwater. Most of the time, animals have the nictitating membrane that helps to protect their third eyelid, that helps to protect their eye, and that covers their eye so that you can't see. But these guys obviously need to be able to see underwater. And so that protective shield over their eyelid or over their eye allows them to do that.
And do these guys ever sleep in the water or only on land?
No, they sleep on land. Again, some species will sleep in the water, especially your sea otters. They're going to rest in the water. And that's where, you know, you get the cuddle of otters because they hold their hands and they attach onto the kelp beds so they don't float away. These guys, you know, they do spend quite a bit of time on ground. They can run on ground. They're not very efficient at it, but they run about 4 or 5 miles an hour. They kind of do this more hop thing than a run, but they will nest and den and sleep on ground. So we don't typically see them resting in the water. Occasionally you will, but sometimes they take little naps, but it's not normal. I see somebody saying, is the fish dead? Yes, we do feed them already killed fish, so there are dead fish, but occasionally we will put in live tilapia. So on occasion we get sustainable live tilapia that we can put in there for them. And it's always fun for the otters, obviously not fun for the fish, but it's great enrichment for the otters, and they get to practice their hunting skills. We don't do it that often because, one, it's, we don't always get that sustainable tilapia that's the right size. It needs to be about 7 inches or smaller. And then, we need to feed them enough fish. Again, these guys are eating, they're eating probably about a pound to every day.
Yeah, probably a pound and a half a day.
Yeah, about a pound and a half a day. And she's only weighing, we have a weight on her. I'm asking Adam. Adam's our
weighs about
area
4.5
supervisor.
big, so
about 9 pounds.
Yeah, 10 pounds,
yeah, so she weighs about 10 pounds. Hassani a little bit more. So they're eating almost a tenth of their body weight every day. Very fast metabolism. So yes, occasionally we'll feed them live fish, but the majority of their diet is going to be all dead.
So we also had a question sort of more related to nuisance animals from a viewer asking about the seals around Cape Cod that attract sharks, and how is it best to handle that type of situation where there's an abundance of seals, kind of bringing those more powerful animals closer to the coast.
Yeah, and it's one where we start to see areas that we have now protected where there is a decline, and the Cape Cod fur seal is a perfect example of that. Those animals were almost hunted to extinction, and proper protection has gone into place. And so it's not that we have an overabundance of the Cape Cod fur seal, but now that we have a sustainable population. And of course, all those sustainable populations are going to bring in other natural parts of their ecosystem. And the predator for the Cape Cod fur seal is going to be our sharks, and typically our white shark. And so we have to remember that this world, this environment is not ours. It's not humans. And these animals have been here for a very long time. And we have to find a way to share this environment with them. And we have to take precautions. I'm not telling people, don't go on your favorite trips and, don't go swim in the water. But we have to take precautions. And there are certain precautions that we can take that can keep us safe and can also keep the animals safe and let them have their natural ecosystem. And so there are certain times of the year where white sharks are going to be more prevalent in different waters. And if you look at, the Atlantic up near Cape Cod, even going all the way down to Florida, if you look at the Farallon Islands off of San Francisco, if you look at Guadalupe, if you look at South Africa, if you look at Australia, there are certain times where we have white sharks more prevalent in the water, and that's usually due to pupping season with the prey species. So, again, depends on where they're at, but they're seals or they're pinnipeds. And so we have to be aware of those things and take proper precautions. So it's not something that, oh my gosh, we have more white sharks, so we need to go kill the white sharks, or there's too many Cape Cod fur seals, so we need to go kill the Cape Cod fur seals and thin out that population, and then that'll keep the sharks away. That's not the solution. And again, there is a balance. There's an equilibrium that happens with predator and prey. There can't be too many white sharks because they are limited on their prey source. They are self-limiting. Predators are self-limiting. So if they don't have enough resources there, you will not have that many predators there. There can only be enough predators there to sustain how many prey are there. And we need those predators to keep down on the prey. So if you have too many Cape Cod fur seals, well, guess what the predator is to take care of those? That's going to be the white shark. So it's something that we just have to be aware of whenever you're going out into your environments. Here in the desert, in the Sonoran Desert, we have coyotes, we have mountain lions, we have bobcats, we have rattlesnakes, and be aware of what you have in your environment when you're going out to enjoy it. I want people to go out into nature. It's an amazing part. We need to become a part of that nature so we can respect it and help protect it. But it's one also that you just need to be aware of what you're encountering. And by doing so, you can avoid all those animals. I've born and raised Tucsonan here almost 40 years. I go out looking for some of these animals and they're hard to find. And I've never had a negative encounter with any of them. So you know, just be aware of those things. But the answer is not going and eliminating them, because that has devastating effects on the rest of the ecosystem. You start taking out all the white sharks, then you will start seeing an abundance of all of our smaller sharks, which is one of the things that white sharks will prey upon. And so there's a rippling effect that happens that we just have to be aware of. And that's where we work side by side with our conservationists, with our researchers, just to make sure that, you know, we're being sustainable out there in our ecosystem.
Thank you, Jed. I think that was a really important to put out there.
Probably long-winded, but you know.
No, it's a good perspective. You know,
and if you start talking about white sharks, I'm all in. I'm a white shark enthusiast. So we start talking about white sharks, and we got a whole nother hour here.
Let's see. I think we have one more and a couple more questions. Do they build their dens really close to the waterways that they like to swim in, or is it kind of a little bit more out?
They will build their dens close to their food resource. Oh, I don't know if you just saw that on the camera there, but she gave you a great coming up shot with the bubbles that I was talking about earlier. You can kind of, again, see those bubbles that she'll put in front of her face. That allows that air pocket for her to just zip right through the water. So, sorry, a side detail. Yeah, they will build their dens close to, there it is again. Wow, she's doing it. That's perfect. Good shot there, Adam. So they will build their dens close to their waterway, not too close, obviously, if it's going to get flooded, or if, you know, they don't want that crocodile to come up and start stealing their pups. So it's in an area that's, you know, far enough away, but close enough to their resources, because mom, again, does have to leave the pups in the early stages, go and hunt and come back. So she doesn't want that to be too far away from where she's going to be hunting.
Do African spotted-necked otters have pouches where they can hide things like sea otters do?
No, they don't. So more streamlined. So they don't really have a pouch that they're gonna. And again, that's you know, the sea otter is typically, you know, they're out into the ocean, so they have to, you know, go and get something and then bring it back. And they have to usually have that pouch to help them to bring that back. These guys, they're, you know, in a lake, so they're not as far out, and they can just eat on the go, or they'll bring it back to the shore.
I think that about covered all of our questions. If you have any parting words for us this morning.
All right, guys. Well, I just want to thank you again for spending a little bit of time with us here at the Reid Park Zoo on our member virtual chat with our otters, one of my favorite animals here at the zoo. So hopefully you guys had fun, and you know, hopefully we'll get to see you guys on Tuesday. We're thinking of doing our flight connection, our aviary. We've got a lot of really new birds in there, and some spectacular species that are very colorful. So we're going to go around and say hi to the birds. But until then, we'll see you Tuesday. And I'm Jed Dodds, bringing the zoo to you. Stay wild, Tucson.